Hello, good afternoon. I'm here from the room, just checking if the panelists can hear us and if we can hear the panelists. So if you can just turn on your camera and say something so that we make sure that we can hear here in the room. Amil, I think it's already the case for you, but say something more.
Hi, happy to be here. Can you hear me?
It's a bit quiet.
All good? Any
Say
adjustment?
something more. I think it's now it's fine.
Okay.
Try to say something again. My name is Amil.
My name is Amil.
Perfect. Rafaela, can we do the same for you?
Yeah, my name is Raffaella. I am here.
Very good.
It's okay. You can hear for me?
Yes, very good. We can hear you, we can see you. For now, you can keep yourself on mute. And then when you speak, you unmute yourself to avoid any background noise.
Just one thing. Can you show for me the slides and I will tell you next one, next one, and next one. I sent you my slide.
Yeah, for the slides, we will be changing them from here. So when you want to change the slide, you just say next or next slide. And Miruna will be changing the slides.
Okay, good. And so, you can run my slides.
Yes, all is ready.
Do you think that perfect. Now I'm going to be mute.
Rafaela, can you maybe say something more? We're just trying to figure out if the volume here in the room is good. Just say something freely.
Okay, what you want that I can tell?
My
name is Raffaella Bucciardini. I am working in Istituto Superiore di Sanità. Here today there is a 35 degrees, very hot. I am very happy to stay with you.
Maybe Raffaella, your connection is okay, like it works well, because we can hear some noise in between your words, but maybe if you could just double check in the meantime that the connection is strong, but the sound is okay.
Okay, good.
Okay, grazie.
A te.
Hi, Martin. Can you hear us? Hello, Martin. Good afternoon. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear.
Oh, that's great.
I was just away from my chair to get a glass of
No,
water.
no worries. It was just to test. And do you
Yeah.
mind switching on your camera so we can? Okay, perfect. That
Yeah.
works well. Hi, welcome.
Worked well?
We're gonna. Sorry?
Okay. Works well?
Yeah, works super well. And we're gonna start in a few minutes, just waiting for more participants to come in. So thank
Prima.
you.
Thank you. Switch.
Okay, dear colleagues, I think we start not to lose time. Dear guests, those in the room, and the room is already quite full, and also the people online. So it's a pleasure to welcome you all today to this important event on HPV-related cancers and how to accelerate our progress towards their elimination. I would especially like to thank the European Cancer Organization for their initiative, and all of you for being here, whether as speakers, participants, or allies in the fight against cancer. I want to start by sharing with you 6 facts about HPV. HPV infection is common. Nearly all sexually active people are infected with HPV within months to a few years of becoming sexually active. Around half of these infections are with high-risk HPV type. Most HPV infections go away on their own without causing cancer. Our immune system usually controls HPV infections, so they are cleared by your body within a year or 2. High-risk HPV infections that persist can cause cancer. Sometimes HPV infections are not successfully controlled by our immune system. When a high-risk HPV infection persists for many years, it can lead to cell changes, and if untreated, may get worse over time and become precancerous and then cancerous. HPV can cause 6 types of cancer. These include anal cancer, cervical cancer, oropharyngeal cancer, penile cancer, vaginal cancer, and vulvar cancer. And I think most important fact, HPV vaccination can prevent cancer. So HPV vaccines can prevent infection with disease causing HPV types, preventing many HPV-related cancers. This is why today's event is not just another meeting. It is part of strategizing how to make further progress on elimination of HPV. HPV elimination is not only possible, it is within reach. The tools are there: safe and effective vaccination, reliable screening, and accurate public information. But we must accelerate our efforts to ensure equal access across all member states. We still face several key challenges. First, awareness remains low. Around half of Europeans do not know that HPV causes cancer. Second, vaccine confidence has declined, particularly among younger people and in parts of Central and Eastern Europe. And third, we continue to see underinvestment in national vaccination and prevention programs. These challenges demand both political will and also financial commitment. The EU's Beating Cancer Plan and the recently adopted Council recommendation on vaccine-preventable cancers are strong frameworks, but recommendations alone are not enough. We must ensure proper funding where needed, joint procurement mechanisms that ensure vaccines are affordable and accessible in every region. And let's not forget, HPV affects everyone. It's not just a women issue. Expanding vaccination to include all genders, as Luxembourg and other countries have done, it is a step forward. But we must also collect and use sex disaggregated data to ensure we are addressing inequalities, not reinforcing them. Equally important is the role also of sexual education. To truly eliminate HPV, we need progressive, inclusive, and scientifically accurate education, because empowering young people with knowledge is one of the most effective forms of prevention. And finally, let's remember that this is not just a health issue. It is a matter of equity, trust, and solidarity. No country and no person should be left behind in our effort to eliminate HPV-related cancers. I hope today's discussion will help us identify actionable next steps and partnerships to move forward faster and together. Thank you for being there again and for your commitment. And now I immediately hand over to Daniel, and I apologize in advance, but I will have to leave around 4:30, and as I have a trilogue happening at the same time, but my health advisor, Marcin, will stay until the end, and he will report. Of course, he's sitting there. Thank you, Marcin. Also, I will thank him for the organization, because it's the map co-hosting, but the work is doing, as you know, by the APA. So I hand over immediately now to Daniel Kelly, co-chair of the ECO HPV and Hep B Action Network. Daniel, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Tilly. And just to welcome Tilly's welcome to everyone today. This is an important day, as we've heard already. It's a moment to stop, to take stock, and to think of everything we've achieved in the European Cancer Organization, but also where do we go next? I think the MEP who today, Tilly, who's hosted us, they are the allies that provide access to politicians, to thinking, and often the access to power, which is what is needed in health policy in many cases. The story so far in HPV from the European Cancer Organization is one of success, I would argue. We've been in existence for over 5 years, and I've been involved in all of those times and have been consistently pushing for more and more improvements. Because, as we've heard, the Beating Cancer Plan was one of the first achievements that we can look to as having been influenced by our actions in this network. And that was a great success. It made HPV cancers to be on the agenda and for people to know about them. It also led to other issues, such as how countries are measured against each other. And we'll be hearing a little bit more about that later when we look at the HPV Atlas that we now have. There have been huge advances, and some countries are now talking about elimination of this cervical cancer, at least. Now, that word elimination should apply to all cancers related to HPV, but cervical cancer is obviously the one that has had the maximum effort, but the others also deserve our attention. And not everywhere in Europe have those advances been shared. Sadly, there are countries on our continent where the rates are far too high, and screening and vaccination is not available to enough of the population. So there is much that we have to do. My view is that complacency and inaction are both a kind of kryptonite to HPV policy. They drain the policy of action that it needs. So we have to act on complacency and on inaction. Our aim today is simply to look ahead, as well as to stop and think about where we've been. And we're going to do that by hearing from a range of stakeholders in the room, our distinguished guests this afternoon. And as we do, I would urge you to think about, what do we now prioritize? How do we help? Whose support do nations in Europe need? And what kind of support should that be? Importantly, as Tilly has mentioned, which communities are excluded from the protection of HPV vaccination? And how do we ensure that they are also involved in future protection programs? And in a world of great migration across continents, how are we going to keep track of all people who could be accessing this protection? So I will now introduce the first of our speakers this afternoon, and I'm delighted that our first speaker is Kim Hultscher. Kim is a manager at the Salvation Army in Amsterdam. She's a cervical cancer survivor for well over 10 years, and after which she became an expert patient and patient advocate. At first for the Gynae Cancer Patient Organization Stichting Olif in the Netherlands. Apologies if that's not quite right. And since 2017, also on European level for Engage, a patient network from ESGO. Really delighted to welcome Kim. She's currently the co-chair from Engage and specializes in quality of life and cervical cancer prevention. Kim, we deliberately asked you to come and speak first, and you're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for the introduction and also for the opportunity to speak here from the patient perspective. We will hear about all these experts, why and how we can prevent these HPV-related cancers. And I'm here to tell you why it is so important that these cancers will be prevented. In 2013, so yes, 12 years ago already, I was diagnosed with cervical cancer. I was 39 at the time, and I was a single mother of 2 children of 9 and 11. At first, in the Netherlands, we have the screening at 30, 35, every 5 years. We can say a lot about that, but it's okay. Okay, we can say a lot about that, but that's what it is, right? We start at 30. I had PEP1. 35, I had PEP1. 39, I had cervical cancer, stage 3C. At that time, I had no clue about HPV. And in the Netherlands, there was no HPV testing, primary testing, I should say. If there would have been, I'm almost certain that at 30 and 35, I would have been HPV positive and I would have been monitored, right? And would not have had stage 3C cervical cancer at age 39. For stage 3C, the treatment is pretty rough. So I had surgery, I had chemoradiation, I had brachytherapy, which is in, I don't know the English term now, but the brachytherapy, internal radiation, I'm sorry. And that is like very, in a small time is this treatment. It's like 6 weeks. And then basically I always say, then there's nothing left of your body. But I was still there, of course. At the same time, I think really that week that I ended my brachytherapy, my daughter received the invitation for her HPV vaccination, which I, again, did not know about. Of course, I had her vaccinated. My daughter hates vaccinations. She was always the one in the back room, you know, where the children can scream. She said, yes, of course, I want to have this vaccination. Friends around me said, "Oh, Kim, will you give your daughter the HPV vaccination?" I'm like, "Do you have any idea what I just went through? I mean, this treatment is really, really, really bad." And they said, "But the information online is really bad, so we're not doing it because we don't trust this vaccine." 2013, right? Another friend of mine, she thought of it in a more rational way. She said, "Okay, if it's an STI, sexual transmitted infection, then I should just teach my children about sexual health, right? So if they use a condom, it will be fine." I guess we all know here that condoms are good, but not sufficient, right, when it comes to HPV. I also vaccinated my son. He was the youngest one, and I had, again, not really any clue on HPV. I knew it could cause most of the cervical cancers, and I thought at that time, so if he gets vaccinated, at least it will help other women or girls not to get cervical cancer. After that, I learned about all the other HPV-related cancers, right, which could also infect him, like the head and neck cancers, anal cancer, penile cancer. Right now, there's so much more information on HPV, which on one hand is great. I really love that. On the other hand, it increases stigma because apparently you get an HPV-related cancer if you have a lot of sex, if you have a lot of partners. And I hear like mothers say, so of course my child, is only going to have sex with one person and going to marry this person, so does not need an HPV vaccination. And I'm in a long-term relationship, so I don't need to go for screening. So it's very important, and I think you mentioned this as well, Tilly, that we need to normalize HPV. Everybody, almost everybody will get HPV. It's normal. It's just as contagious as a cold. If I have it and we're together, you will get it. And usually it will be fine. But for some people, it will not be fine. So vaccination is important. Screening is important as well. I have one of my colleagues from the Czech Republic. She was vaccinated and she still got cervical cancer at the age of 23. So vaccination is important, but please also get the screening and watch out for the symptoms. Because she was 23, had her treatments and could not get children anymore. Fortunately, she got now a baby through surrogate. But of course, this is a horrible diagnosis to get when you're this age. In the Netherlands, about 900 women a year get cervical cancer, 200 die. So that is a little bit less than a quarter. I checked numbers in Europe and I Googled, and then of course you get different type of numbers, but it was in a range from 56,000 women who get cervical cancer per year, 24,000 pass away, which is way more than a quarter in the Netherlands. So it's not fair in Europe, right? The access to probably vaccinations and screening, but definitely also to treatment is not equal. And of course, we as patients really want to fight for that. We know in some East European countries, the treatment might be there, but if you don't have the money, you cannot get the radiation, or there's not enough radiation machines. I don't know how you call them. Treatment is affected if you get detected early. But then it has major consequences on your quality of life, like bowel problems. Every morning I have problems. Bladder issues. I have to go to the bathroom at least 20 times a day. I have lymphedema. If you see my right leg, it's pretty big. I have to buy shoes that is twice my size because my foot cannot fit in a normal shoe. Sexual health issues. I have problems with standing, with walking, with sitting with my leg down. Like right now, I feel my leg getting bigger and bigger. And I have a job where I can, check my time. I have also energy levels. I can start when I want to start. I can continue later. But if I would be a teacher, if I would be a nurse, if I would be working in a store, I would not be able to work right now. I would not be able to do that job. I had children, have children. I did not have children. At that time, still have them. I remember my daughter asking me, "Mom, can you promise me that you're not going to die?" And of course, this is a very hard thing as a mother to hear, especially when you're a single mother. And I said, I cannot promise you, but we will do anything we can to make sure I stay alive. At the same time, there are a lot of women who are not able to get children anymore, who, because of the treatments, they cannot conceive themselves anymore, and might get a surrogate, which is also very difficult in a lot of countries. And then, of course, it's largely preventable. And the stories from patients, you know, they can inspire change, which is so important. I don't know if you know the book from Linda Eckert enough, Because We Can Stop Cervical Cancer. I also got to share my story in there. It emphasizes the importance of the voices from women. Now I say women, of course, also the men who are affected by HPV-related cancers. And around the world, at least women are fighting right now to prevent cervical cancer because it has so much impact. And it's very painful that it is preventable. And there's still so many people are suffering. And I know colleagues who did not just have cervical cancer, but for example, vulvar cancer and a precancerous cervical cancer, precancerous anal, you know, like everything combined. So, of course, we know here through HPV vaccinations and through screening, we can stop these HPV-related cancers. Please use our stories. Please use our voices. And let's stop the stigma. I think that is very important. Normalize HPV so we can eliminate all HPV-related cancers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim. I think it's a salutary message that this is the reality of your experience, that we have to learn from these experiences and we have to make it better for people in the future, for your children, and stop this preventable cancer and the other cancers also that you have mentioned. So thank you very much for sharing your experience. I know it's not always easy, but you do that very well. So thank you. Let's move on then to our to take it up to the level of national campaigning. The second speaker this afternoon, I'm delighted to welcome my colleague and friend, Professor Rui Madeiros, who is a board member of the European Cancer Organization. Rui is a clinical scientist and university professor, deputy director of the Research Centre of IPO in Porto, in Portugal, and head of molecular oncology, viral pathology research group, well-published author, and an expert in virology and all aspects of cancer that many of us don't understand. But you are the person, Rui, who's going to tell us about some of the success stories in terms of what Kim has just presented. So welcome, Rui. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'd like to say I've been here 16 years ago on the Parliament, receiving an award of knowledge, the Pearl of Wisdom. I will explain why. 30 years ago, I was doing some research on HPV for many years, and it was our job working on the biggest cancer hospital in Portugal, and I was working with gynecologists, oncologists, and a oncologist called me, get to know this lady. She has cervical cancer, and she was 25 years old. So it was a very beautiful lady with cervical cancer, advanced, and after that, she told me, no one had told me anything about this. So it's because causes like Kim and this, I had a change on also my way of proceeding. And I began to work with the community and the cancer organizations and the cancer leagues, spreading our knowledge and tried to convince the community on the prevention of this preventable cancer. So, and we have now tools. We have two major tools, which are vaccination and screening, and get it together. Those tools, it works. Next slide. Yes. A good example you all must have heard is Sweden. It's an excellent example, and I must say it's also our example. But it's not a real-world example. So I would like to say this because it's an excellent example, ideal example, and we have to spread the message all over Europe, the good examples, to do some benchmarking with the good examples. The ideal example at this moment is Sweden, but I would like to call your attention for, next slide, Portugal as the real world example. We are not rich, we are not the best in organizations, but we do a lot of things well. And those things are making numbers and results. And I would like to demonstrate to you those examples. For instance, next slide, please. The example of the confidence of our community in our health professionals, in our vaccination system is a long-run system, and our politicians do also believe in our health system. It's another change. So everything runs if our community believe in the ideas, the good ideas, and also our politicians do decide in favor of communities. And it's easy now. We have the tools, so just who decide, and at least it will be the politicians, they have to decide in favor on the community. We had that in Portugal in 2009 for vaccination, and in 2016 for screening with the new molecular system, and it works. Next slide, please. Also, as I said to you, our national system is a long-run system, is a government system, but it's very well organized, and we have a lot of success, for instance, in all the vaccines you should think. All of them, we are ranks of targeting the population over 90%, which is a huge success. WHO also referred that, and it's an excellent example using our system. It's organized on health centers, and the health centers do offer the vaccine for everyone wanted. Next slide, please. And the examples are out there, and for instance, on HPV vaccines, our ranks are over 93% targeted, which is excellent. I could show this for other vaccines, and it works. The system works. And on the screening, in most of the areas, we have over 70%, ranging in some cases 87%, which is also excellent. Using this new molecular system, detected HPV DNA, which is the advantage, it's optimizable, it's easy to do, and it's fast in the answer, in the response. Next slide, please. And I must say it's not Portuguese, it's Croatian. And other similar countries are taking a look what is happening in Portugal as a real-world example. So I would like to take your attention on this because our system is working. It has a lot of defects. It's not perfect, but it works. And I will show you at the end. Next slide, please. One of the demonstration that it works. It's the European Cancer Screening Policy Index. It's something that some months ago appeared, and it's showing Portugal as #2 example on acting on good procedures on this matter. So we have a demonstration of success besides the rate of vaccination, besides the rate of screening. So I would like to call your attention on this idea. There are the ideal worlds, the ideal countries where everything is perfect, and there are the real world examples that we should take a look and probably are good examples for the Southeastern Europe. Next slide, I think it will be the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rui. It's good to hear about the success of your country and also the part that you have played in this journey from your award until today. So thank you very much. Our final speaker in this first session is online. I hope, Rafaela, you can hear us.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Good to. I'm just going to introduce you very briefly, Rafaela.
you.
So you're very welcome. It's great to have you here. So now we're going to look at the European level of some of the projects that have been done recently, including the PERCH Joint Action Project. Raffaella Bucciardini is Director and Scientific Coordinator of the Health Inequalities Unit at the Italian National Institute of Health. She leads numerous European and international projects aimed at health inequalities and promoting global health, with a strong focus on vulnerable populations and the social determinants of health, such as we've heard today, vaccination and screening. Raffaella, you're very welcome to make your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you again, and thank you for this opportunity. Okay, my task today is speak about how European countries are working together to eliminate HPV-related cancer. In particular, as you told me before, I will talk about PERCH. Slides, please. Next slide. Oh, thank you very much. Okay, PERCH is an European joint action. It is funded by the EU4 Health Program from 21-27 and coordinated by the Istituto Superiore Sanità in Italy. It involves 18 European countries, as you can see on the picture, working together. It started in November 2021 and will end in August 2025. In this project, we focus on 4 main areas: HPV vaccination, communication strategies, training health care professionals, and equity in access and outcomes. For us, it is very important. Our goal is to improve the prevention of HPV-related cancer through stronger and more coordinated action. Please, next slide. Okay, thank you. Okay, in the 27 European countries, HPV vaccination is included in the national immunization schedules for both girls and boys. However, in other European countries, important differences still remain. For example, some non-European countries like Albania, Montenegro, and Moldova only vaccine girls. Others, such as Russia and Ukraine, have not yet introduced HPV vaccination. Only 3 European countries, Estonia, Ireland, and Spain, have adopted the single-dose schedule. And another very important issue for us is that several countries don't yet connected vaccination data with screening and cancer registers. Please, the next one. Okay, just briefly what PERSH has done. PERSH has provided practical tools and importance to support the countries. It, for example, just to give you some idea, it has analyzed national vaccination programs and identified barriers like misinformation, low awareness, and safety concerns. It has trained over 21,000 healthcare professionals on vaccine communication. It is a support national strategies for target campaigns, especially in school and communities. And the project is very important, addressed both practical obstacles and communication challenges. Please, the next one. Okay, just a very important section on communication, because the person identified several effective strategies for communication. For example, according to our data and evidence, schools are trusted environments to reach adolescents and parents. Creative formats such as video, rap, we did a very useful Italian rap song with our students. The podcast increase engagement. Moreover, digital channels, including social media, expand outreach. Co-creation with adolescents makes message more reliable. And another very important that we found that the parents respond better to clear information from teacher and the health professional. And another very important for us is that evidence-based content increase for sure vaccination confidence. Here's the next one. As you know, there are some important challenges to be faced. For example, according to our lesson learned from PERSH, we think that some healthcare professionals feel unprepared to answer vaccine questions. Misinformation, especially online, still influence public opinion. Regional inequalities in access to information persist. Many countries, as I told you before, for us it's very important, this issue, lack integrated data system linking between vaccination screening and cancer outcomes. So we think that addressing these challenges is crucial for more effective and equitable HPV prevention. Next slide, please. Okay, what do we think to do? We had the opportunity to have a very important meeting in June here, and some of the people present here, Silvia and also Rui was present. And what we think to do now, that in this next phase, we would like to prepare a manifest of intent that will be shared for sure with major stakeholders, including health authorities, professionals, and community representatives. In this document, we will propose the following key points for discussion, obviously, and for agreement. What we would like to do is expand gender-neutral and school-based HPV vaccination. Invest in continuous training for healthcare professionals, but also for teachers. This was a very important lesson that we had during PERSH. Strengthening communication campaigns targeting adolescents and parents. Promote data system, data connection, vaccination, screening, and cancer outcome to monitor equity and effectiveness. The manifesto will be sharing. I think that I will have the possibility to share this first point by the first week of August. So I finish. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you again for this important opportunity for us. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Raffaella. It's great to hear about the pan-European picture, because I think that we do need to look at the variation across our continent. And for me, as time goes past, I think this is more a question of making it normal, making it a part of health system rather than an add-on or an extra. And it's not until we get to that stage that some of these problems will be solved. But thank you very much for the moment. So we have a few minutes now, just a break for any comments or questions on our first speakers. Please do, if you would like to join, please do tell us who you are, where you've come from, and we'll try and ensure that your questions can be asked. We have one here. Yep.
Hi, my name is Amy Nolan. I'm the Director of Clinical Affairs at the Irish Cancer Society and delighted to be here with my friends, European Cancer Organisation. Thank you. I was really interested to hear what Portugal are doing, you know, and how you're implementing the program in by 2030, eliminating cervical cancer. And in Ireland, you may be aware that we have an action plan for 2040. So we're a little bit behind you, but I'm just wondering, are there key recommendations that you think you would prioritize for us to achieve that by 2040? Thank you.
Our plan is to be based on the success of our national health plan. So it's not only HPV, it's part of the process. For us in our country, it's natural or normal to be vaccinated. So I would deal very much with the communication on the community. This issue, it's normal to be vaccinated. It's something to deal, and it's normal to do HPV test or other thing. Our recommendation is, of course, offer the solution, and we have here two solutions: vaccination plus screening, but also dealing work on the community to prepare a good field on trying to avoid the resistance on the process. Because in my opinion, it is very important our communities to be informed, and also to have the examples of, we call it champions like Kim, that are good examples and demonstrate the need to avoid this, and the best way to avoid a nightmare, which is to have cancer, is to do the health recommendations, which are natural and normal, to be vaccinated and screening.
Thank you very much. It's good to hear from Ireland. I know that the Laura Brennan campaign had a huge success, and that young lady who sadly lost her life to cervical cancer made a huge impact.
Yeah, Laura Brennan was a 26-year-old diagnosed with cervical cancer, and she actually dedicated her life, the remainder of her life, to ensure that people in Ireland and beyond would have their cervical check done, and just have that awareness piece. And we actually had a catch-up program. So particularly around COVID, and a little bit after that, many people of that age bracket did not, the 12 and 13-year-olds who should get the vaccine were not able to get the vaccine. So a catch-up program was initiated, and it was for girls up to the age of 26 and boys up to the age of 21. And that catch-up program has since ceased since December 2023. The Irish Cancer Society is advocating for it to be reinstated, and it is within the programme for government in Ireland, but we're really pushing it, so we don't know what the block is. some people have said if you have a catch-up program, it means that the 12 and 13-year-olds who are due to have a vaccine may not have the vaccine for some reason. Maybe the parents don't want them to have it, or they make a decision. They say, well, they can make a decision later in life. But our opinion, and only the other day we have a early detection roadshow that goes around to many different shopping centres in Ireland. And I met with a girl 20 years old who missed the vaccine at 12 and 13. And for her now to catch up with the vaccine, she's a medical student, she will have to pay to go and see the general practitioner. She will have to pay for the medicine or the injection, the vaccine, and then she will have to return to a healthcare professional to administer the vaccine. And so all in all, she said to me, I think this may cost approximately €500. And for a third level student who is well aware that this is something really important to have, she is in some ways prohibited or will identify other areas where she needs to spend that money. So that's a real life example of how we really feel the catch-up program needs to be reinstated.
Thank you, Amy. That's a really good insight. Very quick question I want to put to our host, Tilly Metz. It's asking, how can the EU better promote clear policy on gender-neutral vaccination, especially in low and middle-income countries?
Thank you very much for that question. And this is, of course, a key question. And we are asked often, what can the EU do better? And it's clear that, first of all, to do better, we need more own resources for the EU for health. General, we need more funding. That's something I'm fighting for very actively. I must say I'm happy that it's really also a concern of the Commissioner to have more resources for the EU for health, so that we can really support general European campaigning, raising awareness for young men and young women to get vaccinated. So promoting vaccination in every country. And you see the situation in Luxembourg. It's not only, it's a rich country. We are at 61.8% of vaccination. So which is really low. When you see Poland, it's 84.4. But in general, we see there's quite, exception of Luxembourg, a difference between the countries like Germany, France, or Italy, and then countries like from Hungary, Poland, and Slovenia. Even Austria is also not so good compared to this country. So yes, we need more coordination. We need more campaigning. We need also that the different ministry at the national level work more together. The health, education, families, so that they work together in really raising awareness and having a coordinated approach. Yeah, and then it's also about, I must say that also, again, we lack in the whole European Union, we lack of healthcare professionals. You all know that around the table here, 1.5 million people are missing in the healthcare sector. So it's not only to have good awareness program, we need also the people that do the vaccination, that inform about the vaccination, and that have themselves the needed training. So we need to do better for clear, also guaranteeing the EU coordination and the EU raising awareness. And sorry to repeat myself, but again, it goes hands in hand with specific funding, because what I'm saying, we speak a lot about competitiveness, defense and security. Yes, but a good healthcare system, prevention of diseases is also part of security. So we should never forget this holistic view when we speak about security, but also competitiveness. Part of it is also linked to have a healthy population to prevent diseases. Sorry, I was a bit long.
Thank you, Tilly. That's very optimistic and positive, and we look forward to future work in this area. So let's move on to part two of our meeting today. Time is always against us, so let's move on. The second part, we're going to try to look ahead. It's entitled Going Further and Faster Towards Elimination Goals. We've heard there are challenges. We've also heard there are opportunities here, and we need to bring this to people's attention. So Thank you to all our contributors so far. Thank you for our questions. Sorry if we didn't get to all the questions online, but they can be picked up in the future. So I'm going to move on then to our first speaker of the second session, who is Marina Davishtavi. And Marina, you're very welcome. Marina is Head of Policy and Research at the European Parliamentary Forum for Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights. And she's going to talk about their tool, this wonderful tool that I often share wherever I can, and talk about the future work. So you're very welcome, Marina. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danny. And first of all, big thank to organizers, to you, to the European Cancer Organization, and to Ms. Tilly Metz for hosting us. I'm very honored to be here to present our research. So if we could go to the slide, please. Right. So the atlas that I'm going to show you now is a joint project with the European Cancer Organization. I'm happy to share that we are currently updating it with even two experts present here. Professor Kelly, Professor Rui are on our expert board. And the next edition will be launched in October 2025, so of this year. The data I'm showing is from 2023, but I will also mention some of the very good improvements. So what does this map show us? First of all, it's a comparative map with core 47 countries in Europe, so it's bigger than the EU. On prevention policy. So we are scoring what governments are doing to protect residents and citizens from HPV. It focuses on three aspects. We look at how primary prevention is delivered, how secondary prevention, so screening, how is that delivered. And also a lot has been said about lack of awareness and misinformation, anti-vax movement. So we are also looking at online information and how the states deliver information to the citizens. The atlas doesn't reflect the prevalence rate, so it's not a prevalence map. It looks at policies and what governments need to do to improve the access. So first of all, if we look at the map, we can see a lot of inequality. So this, in the European Union, where we have so many mechanisms to coordinate, I think this is something that should be tackled. Another thing that is very interesting, if we look at that countries with similar economical power, neighboring countries sometimes have different scores, which also underlines that this is the issue of political commitment. Sometimes the resources are there, but the commitment is not, maybe awareness is not there. So we need to work on that as well. So we have 10, can I go to the next slide? So here you can see more clearly. So that we have in Europe 5 champion countries: Denmark, Sweden, Finland, UK, and Ireland. So UK is not in the EU, but nevertheless, and so these are the countries that have excellent policies on access to vaccination, to screening, and online information. Then we go on with each color, with light green, with yellow and orange. We are seeing the reduction of these services by the state. What I can say for the EU is that no country in the EU is in the dark red. So the EU countries are until red. So Bulgaria is still there, but with the recent developments in Bulgaria, I hope in the new edition it's going to go up. Next slide. So the top countries are Denmark, Sweden, Finland, policy champions. What do they have? All of them, and why they have such high scores is they have primary prevention recommendation. So policy is in place, funding is in place, gender neutral and free vaccination. There is a registry so that we can have policies that are based on actual evidence, and high vaccination coverage rates. There is a good secondary prevention, population-based screening programs, availability of self-sampling, PAP and HPV tests provided, and online information. So governments take the responsibility to inform residents and citizens on where the screening is available on HPV itself and the vaccine and so on. So on the other side of the of the medal. If we go to the next slide, please. So worst scoring countries are Bulgaria, Luxembourg, Greece, and Romania. They have scores at about 60%, so not very, very low, but nevertheless, they can do better. What do they have in common? For example, absence of gender-neutral vaccination, no vaccine registry, a low vaccination uptake, opportunistic screening, only PAP test, no self-sampling, and online information is absent or is only available on different blogs and so on. So state is not delivering on this. Next slide. Next slide. So I want to underscore, since 2020 we're doing this map. So third edition is coming. A lot of progress is taking place. So more countries have programs and policies, putting them in place. More and more countries offer gender-neutral vaccination. So more and more countries have population-based screening program. Both PAP and HPV tests are provided, and more countries improve information. So maybe I'll just go to the recommendations. I don't have a slide on this, but I can just say it without the slide, that maybe focusing on three aspects. What do we ask for from politicians, from governments? First of all, to include HPV vaccination into vaccination schedules and have it delivered through school-based, which offers frequently the best coverage. Have it gender neutral, include boys and girls, and have it be free of charge. Second point is population-based screening, not opportunistic, but really covering, actively inviting people to participate, that it should be free of charge, so accessible, and work on VCR and screening levels to be increased. Offer HPV testing and self-sampling, and work on providing good information, reliable, excellent information that the state provides. I think I'll end here. Thank you so much again.
Thank you very much, Marina. The Atlas, I think you undersell its impact. I think it's had a huge impact on countries who can score themselves against their neighbors and be, I hate to use the word, but sometimes shamed into action. So thank you, Marina, for that and all the work you've done in that field. So let's move on. Our next speaker, I'm delighted to welcome Karam Adel. Karam has joined us. He's a principal expert, policy coordination and strategic affairs at the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control, the ECDC, you may be aware of. And we're going to hear hopefully about immunization across member states and tell us some of the inside secrets. Thank you, Karam.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you to MEP Tilimets actually for championing this topic, which is so important for the work that we do at ECDC. And in the next slide, I'd like also to acknowledge my colleagues in the immunization unit at ECDC that work relentlessly on this topic and that have provided technical contribution to this presentation. And in the next slide, I know all the speakers have made already a very compelling case, of course, about why it's important to work on HPV prevention. But this is to give a little bit of more numbers and to understand that the burden is very clear for the female population and for the male population. And especially when we look at cervical cancer, it is the fourth most common cancer in the EU. In the very young women, we're talking about up to 44 years of age, and we've heard this also in the patient stories. And this means that we have, of course, a huge burden in terms of health, but also from an economic and societal perspective. It's also the second most common cause of cancer death in the same population. And you also have here some numbers about the burden in both sexes. But I want to say that this is more than just about the numbers. It's really about the fact that we have a huge prevention potential with a direct tool that we can use, and we can spare much needed healthcare resources for other parts of the healthcare system or for other cancers that we really cannot prevent. And in the next slides, I'm mentioning briefly the Council recommendation on vaccine preventable cancers that MEP Metz referred to. And this is For us, a really unique piece of soft legislation, because for the first time we recognize this very important link between infectious disease and non-infectious disease, the fact that an infection can become invasive and can become cancer. We have an ambitious goal that is set by this recommendation, and for the ECDC, what you see here, what is important for us is that we are empowered to set up a systematic monitoring system where we can really work with the countries to assess what is their progressive work that they're conducting in order to achieve the targets set out by the Council recommendation and according to the timelines. But the good news in the next slides that we see is that currently, today, and this is fresh data that we just collected from all of the member states, all of the EU countries do recommend HPV vaccination, and this is equally to girls and boys. And these recommendations, at least in principle, are all fully funded by national governments. You see also that most member states use the 9-valent vaccine, which obviously has a broader spectrum of prevention and protection, but some countries continue to use the bivalent vaccine. And this is because in many cases, the primary objective of vaccination programs is really the prevention of cervical cancer, and the bivalent vaccine can be a very cost-effective choice in some settings to achieve this goal. In the next slide, you see that this is an important evolution just compared to 2 years ago. If we just look at 2023, when policies were not equal between male and female recommendation, but what it also means is that the implementation for males, it's still in its infancy in many countries, and that just means that we need time before we start to see the benefits of this investment. In the next slide, I want to show you a bird's-eye view of how vaccination coverage looks like for the female population over the last years on average in the EU member states. And what you see here is that throughout the years, we can tell that countries seem to be going in the right direction. There is an upward trend, but in almost most cases, the coverage targets are far below what we want to really achieve. And in the next slide, you see that this is the same when it comes to the male population, but please keep in mind what I said, that we are still in early days when it comes to the implementation. But as always, in the next slide, when you go to the country-specific data in terms of coverage, and this again is showing you the situation for the female population, well, we really see what the other speakers have mentioned already, that there is a huge disparity across countries, and we do see the geographic differences here. Currently, it's only 5 countries in the EU and the EEA that achieve the target of 90% of coverage for the female population, which is really important for cervical cancer elimination. And these countries are Portugal, Sweden, Cyprus, Iceland, and Norway in the broader EEA area. But what we also see is that for many member states, there is this upward trend that I described, even if they're far below the target. And this means that hopefully these member states are succeeding in achieving sustainability in their levels of uptake, and hopefully they're on track to see their returns on investments. And needless to say, we have a huge disparity between West and East, as has already been noted. In the next slide, you see that these differences are even more obvious because there's a lot of green and very light green. And this means that coverage for females is below even 50%. So there is definitely a lot of work that still needs to be done. In the next slide, you see how it looks like country-specific data for the male population, but again, keeping in mind that we are in the early days of implementation here, and we really need more time, even just to improve the quality of data and the quality of data reporting that happens at the national and then at the European level. In the following slide, I want to show you how it looks like when we go at the subnational level, which is also one thing that the MEP Metz referred to. What happens at regional level is really important. And at ECDC, for the first time, we ask countries to collect the level of coverage that they have at the community level. This means when we go really close to the citizen. And you see here there is only a limited number of countries that can report the data, but it's obvious that we have huge disparities and geographic differences. Even when the coverage at the national level actually looks to be fine, the situation is very different at the regional level. And why is this important? Well, because the most effective actions to increase uptake are those that take place at the local level. So if we don't have the data to diagnose the situation at the community level, it's really difficult to design effective interventions that can make a difference. So in the next slide, in line with the ask that we have as ECDC from the Council recommendation I showed you, we are working on establishing a vaccination coverage dashboard, which I think will hopefully be an additional tool to the many tools that we have seen already that stakeholders have made available to show country-specific data, EU-wide data, and to allow even more benchmarking and analysis according to different HPV indicators. And this is expected to become available by end of 2025. And in the next slide, you see also that together with the dashboard, we are working on a report also to become available by end of the year on what we call the state of health of HPV vaccination programs. So where are we really in Europe today? What are the strengths and what are the weaknesses and the things that we need to work on? And in the next couple of slides, I just have some concluding thoughts, and many of the speakers have already touched upon several of these points. Now we have so many years, we can say, of implementation. So we know what are the critical areas that we need to work on to address drivers of low uptake. And a critical barrier, as was mentioned, remains confidence in the vaccine itself. That's not just on the part of members of the public, but healthcare workers. So of course, this is a huge problem. And we do have this lack of information and health literacy related to HPV and the vaccine consistently in so many studies, whether it's children, parents, or young adults. They report that they do not know what are the consequences of HPV infections. We have issues of access, and this is the case regardless of how the vaccine is accessed in the EU, but school-based programs do seem to achieve oftentimes higher levels of uptake. And cost is still an issue, even if I said that the policies are fully funded by governments, just as we heard in the example of Ireland, when it comes to catch up for people that might be falling in between the cracks, well, cost really becomes a barrier, so we miss the opportunity to prevent there. And in my final slide, the next one, I really want to stress that vaccination is crucial indeed, but it does not eliminate the need for screening, as was said. And the reason is because vaccines do not include all high-risk types, and there is limited impact on unvaccinated women or women that have been vaccinated in later years of life, because that means that the vaccine is much less effective. And we, on the supply side of programs, from the public health system perspective, really must do what we can to improve the connection and the links between the systems, like it was mentioned also by the colleague representing the PERCH project, between cancer registries, immunization registries, and screening services, because only then we can really measure the impact of the programs and how we are doing when it comes to cervical cancer prevention. And a key point for vaccination is that really you need to achieve the highest possible level of coverage by 15 years of age. This is what can make the difference when it comes to the elimination. And digitalization of records is really key. But in Europe, we're still lagging behind, and about 30% of the EU member states are not able to have these registries in place fit for purpose. And finally, I want to stress the importance of gender-neutral vaccination. It is more costly. We are in early phases of implementation, as I said, but this is really what builds resilience to sudden drops in uptake. It builds more resilient herd protection, more pronounced decrease of HPV circulation, and it offers direct and equitable protection to everyone who can benefit from it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Karam, for that uplifting message that we know what we don't yet have achieved, we haven't yet achieved. It's very good to hear that you're on to these challenges. Just to say a final thank you to our host today. Thank you for hosting us today. And MEP Metz, thank you again. We'll move on now, and we need to go to the topic of money, of economics, because that is always the driving force in many of these arguments. Martin Postma, I believe you're online today from the University of Groningen. It's good to have you on board. Martin holds the chair of Global Health Economics at the University Medical Center in Groningen and the Faculty of Economics and Business, both at the same university. He specializes in pharmacoeconomics and health economics in terms of reimbursement. He's been on many committees and advises many health issues in terms of economics. So, Martin, you're very welcome, and we look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Daniel, for introducing me. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you, thank you. And my, apologies, although it's really outside of my sphere of influence. I have a cardiac intervention next week, which should solve my problems, my health problems. And after that, I think I'm free to, much more free again to travel. But for the moment, apologies, I cannot be with you. This report on the HPV's economic burden, I did it together with my colleagues from the company Ask Academics, as you can see on this first slide. And actually, one of the colleagues, Gabriel Gurgel do Amaral, is actually with you in the room. He did the calculation, so he even knows the details better than me. But let me go on. Next slide, please. So this is a bit general, and we all know that cervical cancer has a large death toll. 350,000 deaths in 2022 is the figure that we repeat here. Of course, WHO has its ambitious 90-70-90 goal for the elimination of cervical cancer. 90% for vaccination, obviously 70% for screening, and then the 90% also for adequate treatment. And in our report, we address the issue, the economic issue, in 13 selected countries worldwide. And when we looked a bit more in detail, we found actually that only one of the 13 countries that we looked at is really on track to achieve the WHO targets in 2030, and then possibly, as we know, in 2060, we might achieve elimination. But still a lot to do. That was certainly one of the more non-economic findings. But yeah, let's go to some numbers and economics, and indeed, as you say, Daniel, to the money on the next slide. So the 13 countries that we looked at were spread over the world. They were Central European, Eastern European, Asia, Africa, the Americas. European countries included, where we focus on today, Austria, France, Germany, Poland, Romania, and my own home country, the Netherlands. If we look at the cervical cancer incidence cases in 1 year in these European countries that are in our analysis, the lifetime costs of these cervical cancer cases in one year, as said, amount to 290 million, as you can see in one of the building blocks on the top. Also, of course, this varies enormously per country. The healthcare systems differ, the cancer incidence differs, obviously, population size, vaccination uptake for one more. And could you give one more click to show the table? Yeah, thanks very much. If we look at these 290 million that I mentioned before, costs in 1 year, here you can see how they are spread over the 6 countries, up to 135 million actually for France. And the variation that I mentioned before, I think it is illustrated by looking at what it costs to treat and care for cervical cancer case in the different countries. In the last, the column on the right-hand side, you see the lifetime cervical cancer cost varying from $4,000 to $40,000. We expressed everything in dollars in our report. So then in the next slide, we have some more numbers to show. And here we calculated, what if our selected 6 European countries, we also did it for the other countries, but now we look at the European countries, would achieve the 90-70-90 goal in 2030 and correspondingly achieve elimination in 2060. And then in the red box, in the countries that we looked at, over 3 billion of direct cervical cancer costs could be saved in the coming decades if this ambitious goal of WHO would be achieved as said. If we go a bit into the table, in the middle column, the blue, you can see the preventable costs and major contributors: Germany 1 billion, France 1.5 billion, and underlying, of course, is the number of cases that we can prevent. And again, focusing a little bit on some of the countries, Germany again, but also Romania and Poland. 50,000 cases can be averted in the coming decades with these 90-70-90 policy. Of course, we can also in the right-hand column calculate what this means per head of the population. That is not super complex, but maybe to highlight, be aware that important to know that this is not a conservative estimate in many ways. It is only about cervical cancer, and it has, of course, been highlighted already that there are many other cancers caused by HPV, and it is only direct costs, which means basically healthcare costs, hospital costs, and not production losses, what we label in health economics as indirect costs. People cannot work, productivity losses. So a conservative estimate. I think so far summarizing our numbers, and then on the next slide, and I think also, so given time, maybe just say that actually Marina presenting the atlas, I think highlighted all these barriers that occur in achieving the WHO's targets. So I looked at them and checked it with what Marina said. She mentioned them all. So let me not repeat, also given the time for Mr. Chairman, and let's go to the last slide, which goes again into economics, and it aims to summarize what our economic evidence now can help beyond only showing numbers. I think crucial, showing that with these numbers, crucial input for cost effectiveness analysis and often screening as well as vaccination HPV comes out very cost effective. And this means, this supports that we should conceive vaccination, but prevention in general, not as a cost, but rather as an investment. That is my first point here. And then secondly, we use, of course, the economic information to guide allocation of our scarce resources. And again, the same studies that I mentioned show that deploying our resources in the field of HPV prevention is a very worthwhile goal to allocate our scarce resources to. Thirdly, economic impact differs potentially per region. I think it was also mentioned today, per locality. And it is important to link our economic analysis to potential minority groups and potential socioeconomic deprived groups. I was a member of the JCVI for quite some time in the United Kingdom, the Vaccines Committee, and it was always an important issue also to look into the inequity in society. And we can support that with economic and analysis and socioeconomic status, for example. And then finally, my last point, it strengthens the economic numbers. Numbers resonate well with the Ministry of Health, but certainly also ministries of finance and economics. And it strengthens the case for mobilization, political will of sustained financing of human papilloma virus elimination. Last slide. Thank you very much for your attention. Give the word back to Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Martin. It's always good to hear the important question of money being on the table, because that at the end of the day is often a deciding factor for many governments. But sometimes you have to spend to save, and that's often the case in cancer, because these cancers are very expensive to treat, and the treatment costs are, if you want to treat well, that is also expensive. But thank you, Martin, for that insight, and we hope that you're well enough to travel again very soon. Thank you. So this brings me to our final speaker of the afternoon, and we go now to Amil Drusic. Good afternoon, Amil. I hope you're there. I'd like to introduce Amil as our vice chair of the network in the European Cancer Organization. Amil is a medical doctor specializing in oncology, radiotherapy at the oncology clinic of the Clinical Center, University of Sarajevo. And he also this year began his master's in molecular oncology in Madrid. So Amil, we've been hearing a lot about variations across Europe. So can you tell us something about your region in Eastern Europe? Welcome.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the introduction, Danny. First, let me thank the MEP Tilly Metz for hosting this event, and you, Professor Kelly, for chairing today's proceedings. I also appreciate the chance to address you from the oncology clinic of the Clinical Center, University of Sarajevo, although I join virtually my commitment to our shared goal, which is eliminating cancers caused by the human papilloma virus, called Not Be Stronger. So at the start of this year, the European Cancer Organization gathered policymakers, clinicians, and advocates in Sofia to confront the stubborn inequalities that still separate Southeast Europe from the rest of the continent. EU and non-EU delegations left the meeting with a shared declaration, pledging faster, fairer progress on vaccination, screening, and data quality. The ink is barely dry, yet the region has already begun to transform. So, for an example, Bulgaria has adopted a 2025-2030 plan that finances free 9-valent HPV vaccination for girls and boys and sets ambitious annual coverage targets. In my home country, Bosnia and Herzegovina is also riding the same wave of change. We already have gender-neutral vaccination in several parts of our country. Building on that progress, the Ministry of Health of the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina has issued a notice recommending HPV vaccination for all adolescents. And as we speak now, several cantonal public health institutes are budgeting for rollouts, I hope, in the end of this year. Also, Romania has written free vaccinations for girls and boys aged 11 to 26 into its national immunization calendar. And North Macedonia already upgraded the 9-valent vaccine offer. It's for free to young people up to 19. Together with the gender-neutral programs Serbia introduced in 2022 and Croatia in 2016, Southeast Europe is converging on universal adolescent coverage. But not only this is happening in this region, also regarding screening and awareness. Countries across the regions are replacing older methods with high sensitivity HPV tests and building organized screening systems to reach every eligible woman. Awareness is rising just as quickly. Prevention messages flash across football stadiums, scoreboards in Romania. In Bulgaria, regular health ministry briefings and outreach have already produced a notable rise in vaccine uptake over the past years. And in my home country, Bosnia and Herzegovina, a gender-neutral social media video campaign run by the Association of Oncologists, Think Pink, and Youth Ambassadors for the European Code Against Cancer has reached tens of thousands of teenagers and parents, proving how low-cost digital outreach can boost the demand. But there are also three stubborn gaps waiting to be closed. The coverage disparity. Some urban districts approach a higher vaccination initiation, while rural communities still lag in a low percentage of vaccination. The next one are data deserts. Too few areas maintain robust immunization on cancer registries, making it hard to target resources or measure success. The next one is financing. The school-based delivery model that works well elsewhere requires upfront investment that smaller regions struggle to secure. So what could be possible solutions? One of the possible solutions would be an EU-backed twinning mechanism to help every region implement a school-based opt-out vaccination model using the WHO-endorsed single-dose schedule. Why single dose? One shot provides protection, cuts vaccine and delivery costs roughly in half, and eliminates second dose dropout, making 90% coverage feasible even in remote areas. Countries such as the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Australia have already adopted this schedule and report smoother logistics and faster uptake. Next possible solution would be a EU for Health bridge grants to fund the registry software and pooled vaccine procurement until national and regional budgets can assume the cost, ensuring every dose is tracked and every euro delivers maximum impact. Also, micro grants for youth-led communications, so the successful digital strategies already piloted in the Balkans can be scaled across Southeast Europe, turning teenagers themselves into the most persuasive advocates for vaccination and screening. So the price is within reach. WHO modeling shows that vaccinating 1,000 girls prevents about 14 cervical cancer deaths. For countries the size of Bosnia, for example, achieving an ambitious 90% coverage by 2030 will spare hundreds of young lives in these generations alone, before we even count the additional HPV-related cancers prevented in women and men. So, colleagues, Southeast Europe is no longer trailing behind in HPV prevention. It is becoming a laboratory of rapid collaborative action. With sustained support and our shared resolve, we can ensure that the region crosses the elimination finish line alongside the rest of Europe, turning today's aspirations into tomorrow's reality. So thank you once again. Many thanks to Ms. Metz and Professor Kelly for their leadership, and greetings and bye from Bosnia.
Thank you very much, Amil. It's so good to hear of that positive attitude that I know we felt in Sofia back in January, that people wanted to do better. They wanted to share expertise and to work to protect your young people. So it's wonderful to hear your message. Thank you, and it's great to have you on the call today and to have you on, indeed, on the Action Network in the future. So I'm going to then thank all our second session speakers. Thank you for your expertise, for your willingness to share your insights. These are all important to our future direction. There is a few minutes for some questions or comments, and I'm happy to take those. We have one already from online, directed towards Martin Postma. Are you still with us, Martin?
Still here.
Good stuff. Here we go. So this is from Tim Shand of the Global Action on Men's Health. And Tim wants to know whether there might be any data on potential cost savings for all HPV cancers, not just cervical. Do we have any data on those? And he also wishes you well again soon.
Oh, thanks for the letter. Thanks. Of course, in the context of extending the HPV vaccination programs to the boys, in that context, we did a lot of, in many countries, did a lot of cost effectiveness studies and have indeed also looked into the costs of cancers related to males, but also to in that step that we took also other cancers for females. If we would go through the various cost effectiveness studies and look at their sources, yes, we can make a picture of that. But unfortunately, our report here limits to cervical cancer, but would certainly be worthwhile to extend. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Martin. Any other questions for Marina, for Karam, for Martin, or Amil? We have one from Lisbeth.
Yes, thank you very much, Danny. I am Elisabetta Zanon from the European Cancer Organization. I have a question for Karam. If I have seen your figures right, you were showing the HPV vaccination for girls, women, and then for men in different years. And there was a figure for, let's say, a percentage for 2021 in terms of vaccination, which was higher compared to 2023. There was not a big difference, but there was a difference. And I wanted to ask you if you could elaborate a bit on that, why there is this stabilization or even a little bit of a decline.
Thank you very much. It's a very valid question, and you saw correctly in the slides. There's a lot of analysis that have been done to try to understand what is the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on levels of uptake. 2021, we were in the middle of the pandemic. For the EU countries, we considered that there was not a major interruption in the delivery of vaccination services. So they were still performing in 2020, 2021, in spite of the wide lockdowns. But there is a knock-on effect, of course, that is very difficult to quantify, that just in general has hit vaccination because of the COVID-19 vaccination. And that may explain why in the following years we do see a little bit of decline. But the 2024 data have just come out. It was not possible to put them in these slides. And actually you see that they do continue according to this trend that I tried to describe, where you look at the average of countries, it is somehow very slowly going up, but still far below the targets, of course.
But vaccination continued during the pandemic, during the lockdown.
This is indeed, there has been, we've done quite a lot of analysis on that. It's very vaccine specific, it's very population specific, but when it comes to HPV vaccination, there is some percentage point that was lost. But overall, the vaccination programs have continued, we could say, at a very satisfactory pace. Yeah.
Thank you. We have a question at the end, please.
I'm Brenda Strohmeyer from Euractiv. I'm writing a story about STDs and how to prevent them. And I just would like to know, because you just focus on cancer vaccination, especially a question, to Karam. But before it was mentioned that condoms are not enough. Do you have a recommendation on sexual behavior in terms of HPV? Yes, please.
Yeah, of course, this is a big part of the picture. Actually, it was mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, I believe, by MEP Metz. Sexual education is very important. I mean, and the point is about having a behavioral interventions that actually explain in a comprehensive way what are really HPV infections? When do they happen? What are the consequences? What should you do? Vaccination is the primary tool that we know can help us to prevent these infections in the first place. So probably that's why you also see that there is so much focus on messaging around that. So this is very critical to keep in mind. But there is so many concerns and issues also in linking the vaccine to sexual activity. This has been the case ever since the introduction of the vaccine, that ideally you would really want to have interventions that from a communication perspective integrated into adolescent health, other kind of interventions, sexual health as well, but going a little bit broader to avoid having the stigma.
Yeah, but I'm more interested in the more explicit recommendations, because I'm doing sex education. I've been doing that for a long time, and it's very hard to say, what do you recommend apart from, well, do you recommend not to have oral sex, for example? Is there a recommendation if you say condoms are not enough, right? I mean, yeah. Yes, but look, I'm too old to be vaccinated, for example. It's like they don't recommend it for me. So there are still a lot of people who are over 30 and are not vaccinated. Should we all get vaccinated, or should we change our behavior? Is there a behavioral part of it?
Thinking from my perspective, I think in those situations, it's the screening argument that then comes to life, because I heard someone describe HPV as like glitter. You know, when you have glitter and it goes everywhere in your car and your pockets, and so it doesn't need to be penetrative sex. And so for those people who maybe escaped vaccination or feel they're too old for that, then the service that we need to offer those people is screening, and whether the DNA screening, which is much more accurate than Pap screening, is implemented in, it's now going to be introduced in the UK, and people will get the test through the post, they will take their own sample, they will return it. So sexually active people can be screened.
In Germany, they have cut down screening because of the HPV vaccinations costs. So it's sorry that that's happened.
Yeah. That would be my response to, you will never stop people having sex. So we need to make it safe. Yeah.
If I may interject.
Please.
Yeah, please. I'm sorry. I'll switch it off.
No, it's very fast. You should continue to do sex education, and also on your sex education, instruct on the risks of every act you do, independent you are. There is no 100% safe way. The other message is we have some tools that can help, but the risk is also of your own. So it's the idea there is no 100% secure way to avoid it. But we have some tools, it works in most of the cases, and sex education is important, but every act is at your own risk. It's like crossing a highway or a street on the red lights or not, it's up and...
Thank you. I'd like to move to our question here.
No, I'm sorry. It wasn't a question, it was an answer to you, if I may. What you asked is a very genuine question, because there is, as you see right now also, there is no clarity about what to do with people who are not vaccinated. And what I would like to say is that it was somewhere I read, because this was a question in my head too, when I was studying health literacy for HPV vaccination. And they said that a condom could also be used as a barrier for oral sex. So I think that part could be explored further as an answer to your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe we have a question for... Oh, you had a question?
Yeah, because you mentioned STD. I really would like not to use the term STD, because it's a sexual transmitted infection or virus and not an STD because it's, yeah, but that's, I think it's important for the stigma if we use other terms. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our final question, because I realize time moves on and we need to finish and go home. But back to Amil, we have a question, Amil, about gender neutral vaccination is also on the table in Southeast European, or do we risk missing these groups as we did in Western Europe? If you're still there, Amil.
Yes, I'm there, but I had some problems. I didn't hear your question.
Yeah, no problem. It is a question about gender neutral vaccination in Southeast Europe. Will that also be available rather than trying to catch up as we've had to do in Western Europe?
That's an important question, and I think that it needs to be implemented from the beginning. We don't have this. How can I say? We cannot wait until we see a higher number of HPV-related cancers in men, for an example, to ask and to ask the question, why didn't we introduce the HPV gender-neutral vaccination? So yes, I agree with you totally. It needs to start from the scratch, from the beginning, and as I can see, the trend is positive in the last couple of months, especially after the Southeast Europe HPV conference that I mentioned, and I believe in the coming months and years we will have a positive trend regarding that.
Thank you, Amil. Just a final comment from me. I know now in some countries that oropharyngeal cancers are now higher in incidence than cervical cancer, and that is a disease of men. The highest incidence in those cancers is in men. So those men who have not been vaccinated, they are now showing these new cancers. So that is a priority issue for our future discussion and our future attention.
And can I just say additional comments to that? Because as I work with cancer patients and I see a large amount of men coming with oropharyngeal HPV positive cancers, and it's an alarming thing. So we need to act fast and to make the gender neutral vaccination available in all the regions, all the countries.
Yeah, thank you, Amil. So we've come to the end of our time. I just want to thank everyone for being here in person or online. I'd like to thank all of our speakers today. I'd like to thank our host, Tilly Metz, for hosting the event, the team at European Cancer Organization for their wonderful organizing, orchestrating, making sure we're all in the right room at the right time and doing the right things. Of course, this is not the end of this conversation. This is an ongoing conversation. We're already thinking about our next actions, how we take this issue forward. We've heard some issues this afternoon about the opportunities, the inequalities that exist, but we need to be remaining active in terms of what we do next. So if you are not part of our action network and would like to be, please do feel free to contact Maruna here on this email address. Also, we have a declaration that we signed after our Eastern European meeting in Sofia. If you'd like to sign that, you can use the QR code, and please do add your support if you would like to that. I think we've already had some impact there, and it's amazing how that happens. And finally, I'd like to introduce the invitation to our European Cancer Summit in 2025, which will be here in Brussels. And there will be a session again on HPV, and we will have key stakeholders joining us there to keep the momentum going for eliminating these cancers, these preventable cancers in our continent of Europe. We will look forward to seeing many of you there at the summit, but also to keep in touch, look at our website, keep in touch with our publications. We've got some interesting reports coming out around vaccine hesitancy and cervical cancer policy successes. So please do keep in touch, and we look forward to meeting you again when we look again at the challenges and the opportunities to prevent these cancers. Thank you very much.